All right, folks, good afternoon. Thank you for taking some time on this Monday afternoon to join us for our July webinar. My name is Jeff Yeagley with Compass IT Compliance, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Before I go ahead and introduce the topic and presenter, just want to cover a couple of brief housekeeping items before we go ahead and get started. First, all attendee mics have been disabled to prevent any type of background noise or distractions while the presentation is ongoing. Second piece is we will be making a copy of the presentation and we are recording the webinar. So both of those will be sent out to folks who went ahead and registered later this afternoon or early tomorrow morning at the latest. Third piece is we have the opportunity for a Q&A session as we do with all of our webinars. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and feel free to add those into the chat section. You can go ahead and put them into the Q&A section, and you can direct those also to me in the chat section. My name again is Jeff Yeagley, and that is Jeff with a G. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce today's topic and presenter. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about business resilience and really what does that mean for an organization and why it's such a focal point for organizations and not just business continuity and what the relationship between those two are. Today's presenter is actually one of our managing partners and senior executive IT auditor, Jerry Hughes. Jerry's a founding member of Compass IT Compliance and has extensive experience over the past 25 years conducting IT audits and risk assessments for thousands of organizations across all different vertical markets from healthcare to finance to the government. So he's very well versed on this topic, and this should be a real treat for all of us. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Jerry.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff. Jeff, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Also, I want to make sure everybody on the line can hear okay. I was just messaging one of our employees and they were unable to hear. So can you open it up for a second so we can confirm that we have no issues or?
Yep. Attendee mics have been enabled. So if you guys can hear, please say so, or if you can't hear, please say so.
Anybody? David? Concerning? So, okay, I see Mary. Yeah, I got one that
Mary Beth can hear.
That's good. All right, Barbara's in there. So we got a few that are responding. So if you cannot hear, I'm confident that it's also local to your system. So check that. And actually, the person that did have an issue just noted that as well. So we're good. Thank you very much, Jeff. And folks, thank you for your patience here. And we're going to get started. So I have, based on the introduction, I have some big shoes to fill. All right, we'll get started. Few items we're going to cover in the next 30 minutes, and I will allow a little bit of time at the end to field any questions that come in. So we're going to cover what business continuity really is, what it means to an organization, and then we'll move into a term that some folks I know have not heard before, cyber resilience, and then kind of contrast that with business resilience, and share a little bit about the relationship between business continuity and business resilience. And then we'll cover really methods to achieve business resilience. And I always like to close with a summary and then the Q&A. So that's sort of what we'll address. I will go off topic a little bit in terms of the slides, but I will sprinkle through experiences which I think will solidify the understanding for the listeners. So business continuity, the broad enterprise-wide approach to recovery of an entire business. I mean, we have this in many of our verticals and different businesses that we do work with. A lot of folks have a general sense for what it was, and a lot of folks confuse it with disaster recovery or DR. In the 80s, when I started working in the banking industry, it was just DR. It was the recovery of critical systems sometimes to a hot site, sometimes restoring within the facility. And they had a big focus on that aspect. They quickly realized that we actually need people and processes as well to go along with that technology recovery. and they ramped up what was required. In fact, to the point where the different levels of testing, where they kind of moved us through, an easy test, which there are 4 types of tests. There's a tabletop test or exercise that if you've never done it before, we highly recommend that's the first testing that you do. And then moving through that spectrum a little bit along the complexity and difficulty level, we move into what we call a walkthrough test, where we're not all sitting at that boardroom now. Maybe we're at our desks. We might fold in a vendor and they're on the call, and we open a bridge up and kind of walk through a scenario. Then you get a parallel test where you actually got a lot more pieces involved, folks remotely involved, and people actually sort of assemble. They get called together to the war room, if you will. That's part of a plan. So it kind of really gets really more intense. And then the highest level was really a full test. And what the banking industry learned, as well as others, is forcing organizations to go through and test at that high level often caused disasters. So they sort of backed off a little bit on that requirement and just required that we test our systems regularly, and we increase the maturity and complexity of those tests and document the same, as well as following through with some critical post-mortem lessons learned. So that's a lot of history there, a lot of experience talking. So hopefully that you find that valuable. So the goal is to kind of get you back to normal operations by minimizing, and in doing that, minimizing the impact on your clients. So as I've touched on earlier, the testing is a big piece of it, right? You can have a great plan, but at the end of the day, if we don't test it and retest our plan, it's going to quickly become invaluable, or rather valueless to you. The key is, as systems are changing, even access to systems, talking from experience, again, having restored for a series of financial institutions when I worked at NCR Corporation, we had to restore for hundreds of banks and credit unions. And the only way you can do that with success is constant testing and being aware of what's involved. So keep your plans up to date and make sure you're moving forward with the testing. It's not definitely a one and done activity. I love this quote here. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best. It's actually a subset of a quote by I believe it was Benjamin Franklin, was where he stated, fail to prepare, prepare to fail, and that couldn't be more spot on in my experience as well. So looking through this, it's not just, if I haven't encouraged you enough and through sort of best practices and through the experiences I've had, look, 9/11 and some subsequent failures and disasters have really taught us that we need to be doing these things, but in response as well to those horrible impacts on businesses and folks, it's been becoming more and more a requirement in all verticals, right? So banking always, had it early on as a business requirement that you tested regularly, but as history's taught us, the experiences that it's paramount in all verticals. So cyber resilience, again, a lot of folks haven't heard. It's not a brand new term, but even as you kind of go through time, like I referenced that sort of the 80s and 90s, where DR was what we talked about. Now people are all talking consistently about business continuity, and from that, you going into the late 90s and into the 2000s, where the term cyber and cybersecurity were born through the changes in technology. Where in the 80s, 90s, we didn't talk about cyber really at all, and then with that, terminology like incident response and things like that became part of our normal verbiage and dialogue. So as we look at this term cyber resilience, it's sort of the next step, if you will, right? It kind of refers to the organization's ability to continuously deliver the intended outcome despite adverse cyber events. Cyber being anything from internet based to even just the infrastructure at an organization. So it's all technology. So the term cyber resilience it's an evolving perspective that's really gaining momentum and recognition. It basically brings the areas of information security and business continuity together, and really yielding that organizational or that business resilience. The idea of that overall holistic approach to a business that is resilient to all attacks, whether in the case of business continuity, where we have a natural disaster that might cause an outage, contrasted to a cyber event that may be just a technology failure or issue, but also maybe as a result of a cyber attack or an incident in your organization where a cyber attack took place and results potentially in the same kind of downtime and impact on your client base. So when you kind of bring those together, the term business resilience really is born. And that's, again, business resilience is defined as the ability for an organization or business, to quickly adapt to any disruptions while maintaining your continuous business operations and safeguarding the people and the assets and the overall brand equity. So that's sort of a canned definition, but essentially it's a culmination of having a solid business continuity program and an IT security program. Both of these include your organization. You need to include all the facets of your organization, but also, third-party providers. If you look at today's world, and again, I'll keep referring back to the older days when, processing was often performed within your four doors or at your facilities. And as organizations matured and the complexity and new offerings and demand of service offerings in the industry have continued to ramp up, folks have found it cost effective to utilize, hosted solutions, third-party data centers, as well as, SaaS solutions. Those are software as a service solutions and such, and even infrastructure as a solution. So they've got a lot of stuff that's outsourced now. And when you look at that and you relate it to business continuity, think about the challenges we had about restoring everything that was running within our data center locally that was in the building we were in. Compare that to today's world where we've got, a plethora of services that are far more complex than ever thought before, and delivery channels to our clients, and the idea that you can serve these to, have these services offered to your client base, first of all, often cost effectively, but also from a recovery or business resumption perspective, it's a layup to perform the resumption or far easier compared to what we used to do in the old days. You've got these different organizations that contractually are bound to you. And here's a big point and a takeaway that is important when you do enter into these third-party contracts for services, right? Is that you have a service level agreement with them, and make sure that within that service level agreement, they have clearly articulated the resumption or the availability of the systems that you're contracting them for. I mean, you're still liable. You've contracted with these organizations, and so as such, you want to make sure that you've got a service level agreement that you can live with. So if your plan says, I'm going to be available for my customers, within 24 hours, but you've contracted a service provider that only promises, something like 72 hours, the whole thing, there's a big rub there, and you've got issues. So make sure that as you build your plans, you are considering all the pieces, all the aspects of the business. It is paramount that they align so that you can, deliver on time and restore on time to meet contractual obligations. It's a huge point. So moving forward with that, though, we look at things like, how can we move toward achieving the business resilience, right? I alluded to the business continuity plan and the testing of that plan. So it really starts with building a comprehensive business continuity plan, and that starts with, understanding what's important to your business. We've been brought in as Compass is brought in as IT auditors and consultants to work with a lot of industries in terms of our experiences, but also to be chartered to build a plan for an organization. Some want to fast track it and just kind of go right to, let's get the plan in place and let's test it. We don't have time for a business impact analysis. Let's just build the plan. And I have to stop them there, because in order to build a plan, you need to understand what's important to the organization. That is to say, what critical functions are you performing at your business that need to be restored? What commitments, what service level contractual commitments do you have with your third party providers? You need to understand all these things. So when you go business unit by business unit and understand the critical functions, when they need to be back online, the third party relationships, what those contracts say, pull all that information together, look at dependencies, what's required to make those things tick. And going, kind of referring back to one of my earlier slides, the people, the processes, and the technology, right? We've learned a lot over the years since the 80s and 90s, where again, it was just technology. We need all those things for business to be vibrant. So building that plan with those aspects in mind, starting with the business impact analysis, telling us what's important to you, and working through identifying those things and what's required to make those particular functions work, and coming up with risk assessing it to come up with alternative processing methods and what to do if this is down and that's down, and kind of build mitigation plans throughout. And so after this big exercise, and there's a lot more, you wind up with a plan. It's solid, and you move forward to train the members on the team and the company on how to react during an interruption to service. You perform testing, and then the key piece there on the sort of the fourth bullet down, the third sub bullet, the last item was maintain. It's as important as the rest of it. Once you get a plan in place, you want to keep it there. It's paramount that you go through the exercises to maintain it through, as businesses continue to change and thrive to meet the demand of your clients, but also to mitigate the risks that the ever-changing threat landscape presents us every day. You need to make sure that you're keeping your plans up to date. And as things change, you update your plan. You may sort of update it by going through a mini business impact analysis. You may add or remove services that are no longer critical, or add some that have become critical. And you kind of go through those exercises, updating your plan, and then of course testing it. So it's not a one and done. And again, it's not only a recommendation, but it is a requirement in most industries and verticals. Kind of folded into that plan, and a couple slides back, I referenced the elements of it to move forward towards business resilience as a goal. That it's required that you have a solid business continuity program as well as an IT security program. And I keep stressing those terms, program, and I've used the term plan. And a plan is part of your program. Program just implies, like if we're looking at incident response, the program is, it's the plan, it's the testing, it's the training, it's the maintenance, it's the ongoing monitoring. All those facets roll up to include, or to be included in, what we kind of call a program. So moving forward with that, and kind of giving you a little bit of understanding or definition with incident response, it's part of your it should be part of your IT security plan or program. So you lay that out, and there should be a policy statement surrounding it, as well as plan or procedural details within it. And it would include, similar to a business continuity plan, a team, activities that folks within the organization need to adhere to, and what to do in the event of an incident, rather. Should a negative occurrence happen, whether it's real or perceived, meaning if my system's running slower, for example, if I think I did something, I may have given information away I shouldn't have, that may be a perceived incident. It certainly is a perceived incident initially. I reach out to my management, and inevitably our security officer, and they'll look into it, and it might be benign. It may be what I perceived as an incident, but they investigated and learned that nothing was compromised, and so it turned out to be nothing. But we looked into it. That's really the key to a successful incident response program, is that you train your folks on letting the right people know what to do when something negative occurs like that, even if it is just a perceived incident that never does turn out to be a real incident, so that you're prepared. And then going through, again, very similar to the business continuity, test it, train on it, maintain it ongoing. It's not just a recommendation. Really, it's a requirement in most industries, and an annual requirement as well. One key element to this, as well as business continuity, when you finish your testing, go through a post-mortem, right? A lessons learned, understand what we could have done better during your testing, and marry it with, when we're testing a business continuity plan or an incident response plan, what you're doing is you're measuring what the folks on the testing team would have done, during that test scenario, to what your plan says you should do, right? So as we're going through, whether it's a tabletop test or walkthrough, when we do this for organizations, we walk them through a scenario. We involve a lot of the folks within that process, and then as they go through, we capture what they said they would do. We later marry it with what their plans say they would do, and anywhere there's a delta, we capture that. Maybe it means we should update our plan. Maybe it means, hey, what the folks did during the test was superior to what we've documented. Let's go ahead and update the plan. So these exercises are really, really beneficial, especially performed by trained, competent, experienced folks, and you get a lot more out of it. So anyway, going forward with the ideas and the methods to achieve your business resilience, another facet that's, gosh, gaining serious momentum is the digital forensics facet, and a lot of organizations are putting organizations or companies like Compass on retainer. We have a division. We're not the only ones. There's lots of folks out there that are real good, and if you've got a group that you work with, excellent. But what we're doing here when we involve a forensics organization, and by putting them on a retainer, much like with legal counsel, folks have lawyers on retainer for critical things as they arise. This is similar, and also again drawing analogies between the security world and really the business or the business continuity world and the evolution of what happened there. What you saw in the old 80s or so, we used to have hot sites, and we had organizations on retainer, whether it was just for refueling generators, or in the case of hot sites, when we had infrastructure on site, we had to restore that. So we had organizations on retainer, and kind of fast forward to the late 90s, early 2000s, where cybersecurity and cyber, we're doing a lot more in the cloud, and we're doing a lot more by way of technology and different delivery channels. Not only having an incident response plan in place, but then taking it further. I know a lot of the insurance organizations are looking for folks to have these retainers. If you look at the FFIEC booklet for business continuity planning, you'll see in there, it's referenced throughout, that it's a recommendation today to have one. And where it's going to help you out is really this, where the rubber hits the road for those folks looking for ROI and looking for why I should justify moving in that direction. Having a retainer in place is going to expedite the interrogation of an incident, of a real incident, should it occur in your organization. The value in that is simply this: if we have an incident and your folks are properly trained, which I hope they are through your incident response, planning and your program, where it involves the testing that I talked about annually, you're going through, and if you do believe that a system or systems have been compromised, moving to address that properly by isolating those systems is really the best thing you can do initially. Preferably, if they know what they're doing, preferably not powering those down and losing what's in memory, but really going forward and isolating those systems and involving, pushing the red button and having that, a digital forensics firm come in and taking those systems and interrogating those to determine root cause and to try to determine if any confidential information may have left your organization. And the reason why that is huge, the reason why that can translate to so much, is, and by way of bottom line and dollar and damage, is this: if I have an incident and I have isolated, and I bring a firm in like Compass, and the digital group goes in and does their interrogation, and they can determine, while there was some attack, no data left this facility, I have no legal obligation in any vertical to report that. And I can, minimize reputational risk. I mean, think about the damage to your business if you had to go out and tell the world that something's just occurred. Think about those businesses that are looking to contract with a company like yours, or your competitors, and you have to come to the table with something like that because you're not sure. Compare that now, or contrast that to an organization that has good training on incident response. Isolate the systems right away. Bring in a firm like Compass or whoever you're using for incident response, or rather for digital forensics, and they come in and they're able to determine, nothing left. You don't have a legal obligation to report that. And in the event that you did have an obligation, that we did determine something left, you're able to isolate, minimize that damage, get ahead of it, and if it ever came to civil litigation, historically it's proven that your penalties are far less. You've demonstrated consistently that you take it seriously. You have a strong program. You have a firm on retainer. So you've done all the right things, and this is going to definitely help when it comes to penalties as they may be levied. Okay, to summarize, and I want to wrap up here. I got about 4 or 5 minutes. I want to summarize some points here, and I see there's some questions that have come up. In summary, organizations must have resiliency and instant response built into their security framework. And these aren't just nice to have, but they're a must to have, right? Build, train, and maintain a viable business continuity program and IT security program that has instant response baked into it. That's part of that plan. It's incorporated into it. And that really is what I want to cover. We've got some references for resources, and that's my contact information. I'd like to open it up to questions. I see one. Jeff, you have a couple people had questions. Could you read that, Jeff?
Yes, sure. Great job, Jerry. Thank you very much. We did have some questions that came in here. So great job, great information here. The first question comes in from Joe, and his question says, government uses the term continuity of operations to mean the same as business resilience sometimes. Is this just private sector versus government in the terminology? Pretty similar stuff.
I will say this. I'll say to the person who you said was Joe. Joe had a question. So to Joe, to answer that, a couple things. Just like the use and misuse of DR in my old days, disaster recovery. First of all, disaster recovery is a subset of business continuity, but folks still use and misuse that. I would say this. I would say that continuity of operations definitely speaks to sort of business resilience. Now, one could argue there are other aspects of that business to make it resilient overall, but the key to your to the operations, the key, if all the critical functions are under that continuity of operations umbrella, then I would say, yeah, that's kind of synonymous, right? I would say this, I wouldn't get so hung up on the terms, but more what they mean, right? Understanding that if I have a business and I've got my critical functions, that roll up to it, and I have a strong security program and a strong business continuity program, then whether it's private sector or government, I'm striving for business resilience. In this case, they're using continuity of operations. It's quite similar, Joe.
All right. Beautiful. Next question comes in. Do I need a cyber resilience plan like we have a business continuity plan?
Yeah, and so that's, again, some of the terminology, and I apologize almost for it, but we live in the world of a lot of acronyms, unfortunately, as well as terms that get used and misused. So we have a solid business continuity plan. That's a definite physical plan, a document that you hold that has teams and has your impact and business impact analysis baked into it, and how you're going to restore, what to do, key contact information. That plan is part of your program that I mentioned, your business continuity program, which is testing, training, maintaining the whole nine. But within that, within that program and the plan itself, resiliency, business resiliency is a state of where you're at. It's not, there's no resiliency plan. But if you said, what is the plan? The plan, I would say to you, would be, it is a strong information technology security program. And that program is filled with policies, procedures, monitoring, testing, and training. And one of those sort of policies and procedures are the incident response plan that I just I talked about earlier. Business continuity plan baked into that. Incident response plan baked into that security set, along with my business continuity program, which has, again, the physical document. So those documents, the aggregate of these, the policies, the procedures, from the security world, as well as the business continuity availability world that cover the business, those yield business resilience or cyber resilience as it relates to just the security side. Does that help, Jeff?
Yep, good stuff there. Last one, and this is a good one. And I think you kind of answered this in an indirect way, but I want to make sure that we have a clear answer on this here. Throughout the course of the presentation, and actually even in that last answer, you referred to plan and program a couple of times. What's the difference?
So this is key, and it's used a lot as well throughout, and I do, as you saw through my slides. So whether we're talking about an IT security program, a business continuity program, an incident response program, all these things, when we use the word program versus plan, think of a plan as a deliverable. It's a document. It's X pages long, and that's a deliverable that you can touch. It's tangible. Where a program is that, but also so a plan is a subset of a program, whether we're talking about any of those three I gave as examples, along with the ongoing monitoring of it, making sure that it stays up to date, the testing of it annually or semi-annually, depending on how rigorous your business is, and the training on it, right? So I can have a great program, but if my program is somewhat incomplete, meaning I haven't train my staff on it. Well, I may have a document, I may monitor it, but I don't disseminate it to my staff. So you need all these things to have a solid program, testing, training, maintaining of a plan, and then the ongoing monitoring of it, and that includes independent audits of it and things of that nature.
Beautiful. Good stuff. Those are the questions that we have. I'm going to ask anybody if they have any last minute questions to go ahead and either pop them into the chat function here or into the Q&A section, whichever you prefer. But it looks like that's going to wrap up our webinar here. So barring any last minute questions, Jerry, I'll just say thank you to you for taking the time to create and develop the presentation and also deliver the presentation. I think it's a lot of great information. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that, because the Lord knows you're pretty busy. I want to say thank you to everybody who was able to attend today. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us and learn about this topic here. Before we wrap up, Jerry, one last question did just come in. So I'm going to ask you this one here. And this is, I'm going to ask I think it's Kerwin. I'm going to ask you to be a little bit more specific here, but the general question is, can you talk a little bit more about BIAs, which I'm assuming he's referring to business impact analysis.
Yes. So I got this, Jeff.
All right.
So the start of building a business continuity plan, going through this exercise called a business impact analysis. What is that, right? So what that is, and how we arrive at or that process rather, we go through it with, when we do it, we go through with initially meeting with the whole team or the management team, covering the different verticals, whether you look at your org chart and look at the business divisions, depending on how your business is, right? Get those key folks that oversee those areas. Discuss with them. We use tools like some questionnaires to get started, but really saying, look, folks, we need to understand the critical functions that you perform. Now, I choose my words carefully there. I say functions. I could say systems, but it often screams of just, or a big piece of it being technology. And funny, when we did this earlier in the older days, there were many functions that didn't always have IT folded into them that may be critical to the business. Today, I struggle to find those. Today, technology is weaved in every walk of life that we have and every function that we perform. But I still say it that way because there may be those different businesses that might still have manual functions or functions that don't have a technology platform. So it starts with that, right? What do I do? Let's take a group. Let's take finance in any business. I'd interview that person or those folks and try to understand what applications, what programs we're using, what critical functions you perform. Well, we may do we perform our general ledger. We update that regularly. Accounts payable, accounts receivable. We do payroll. Blah blah blah. They list these critical functions, and the real litmus test to what is a critical function. If you crossed it off and said, "Hey, look, I'm just not going to do it," what would the impact be on the business? Really, and that's what it is. Understanding. Let's face it all boils down to dollars and cents at the end of the day. And if a function's not available for a period of time, what's that impact on my business? Well, let's talk about payroll for a second. I think that's near and dear to everybody's heart. If we stop payroll, for a week, a day, and a year, whatever, you go through, we always walk through the spectrum. Let's say, a day, 3 days, a week, 2 weeks, a month. And by getting out to that month, I don't care if you're government or private sector, you get a month, you've covered at least one pay period for that business. And that's huge if you're going to tap people on the shoulder and say, yeah, folks, we weren't able to run payroll this month. We think we'll get it next month, but if we don't, we'll see in December. Maybe we'll get it done then. You'd see quickly that's very critical to the business. You may lose resources, and that function becomes very critical. And with my example, it's kind of cool because it really magnifies it too. Let's say we have a business that gets paid every week. Yeah, if I missed 1 week, if we had a delay and we got paid 3 days later, yeah, it's not great. But at the end of the day, it's not horrible. But you see as you go out across the time spectrum, that function that wasn't so bad if it was a day late, if I move it out and say a week late, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, it becomes much more critical as time passes. So as you go through your organizational business impact analysis, you're going to take those critical functions by department, and you're going to say to them, you're kind of going to say when it's unavailable for X period of time, or basically we'll say, hey, how long could you put up with it not being there? How long could I not, how long can I put up with it and sustain my business before it impacts me? In some businesses, certain functions may result in financial penalty, and those penalties escalate as time goes on. You may have business loss, and some of them are very difficult to measure, but that's the exercise we do. And we go through it with organizations. I'm careful to say to them, look, guys, this is not an indictment on what you do for a living. This doesn't mean, if we don't have a big list here that management's going to come back and say, yeah, we're going to cut bills pay here. It really is just to identify what functions wind up on this very critical list. There's certainly so many more important things you may do, but these are the ones that, may result in financial penalty, client loss, business runoff, things like that. And then taking that list of functions by group and really kind of taking it to the next level and understanding what makes up each function. Well, I need the internet. I need this application. It's hosted over there, blah, blah, blah. And you break them down, each one of them down to these little, building blocks that yield that function success. And then go through and do a little bit of a risk assessment on them. Well, what if the internet was down? What else could I do? Well, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do that. And you work through each one with small remediation or resumption plans for each little function or workarounds, if you will. And you arrive at the most critical functions to your business. There are a lot of other terms we utilize when we do that, but it helps start the process. And it is, not always embraced. It's the most difficult part of the process, but if done right and done properly with, the support of management, you're going to be able to get through it. Again, it's, pick an industry. I can usually go back and pick a law or regulation that guides it and governs it and shows you, I can show you exactly why you must do it regularly. So that's a big piece. I hope it helped a little bit with Kerwin's question.
Yes, I think that it did, and I'll let him answer in the chat here, but that's prompted more questions. So do we have some time for a couple more, Jerry?
I do, and you folks drop off as needed, but I love this stuff, and I can talk about it. Let's see, I got till tomorrow, so I'm pretty open, and I enjoy this. So one of the questions I see, Joe had asked, there's nothing but a stick about get our business process. Do you see the question? Which one, Jeff?
I do. Yep.
Yep.
So I'll read it to you here, no problem here. So it says, there is nothing but a stick that will get our business processes, BIA priorities, to exercise. Have anything else that works for exercise scenarios as motivators? As you say, it's all IT based now.
Okay. So a lot of it is IT based, but I will say this. I'll go back to my second or third slide, Joe, and it's clear, just like the banking world, right? They quickly learned that DR, the IT facet, is not enough. It is the business driver. By the way, I'll go in there as an experienced IT professional and IT certified IT auditor, and I will not tell a business what's important to their business. I know technology and I know business, but I will not go into an organization. It's that business's, their value on each function, what's more important than another function, and what belongs on the list. I can help guide it. I can provide some information, but really, that business understanding what's important and how to get folks into it, right? Because I think what Joe's saying, and I've lived this, being an IT guy, it was always like, well, that's IT's problem, and the rest of the business walk off and sort of rub their hands and say, we're done. This is Joe's problem, or the IT groups. That could not be further from the truth. While IT is pervasive throughout the organization, the business is what drives it. I don't buy technology because I want technology. There was a day when I did, but today, business drives what's behind it. So if this business need is one, that I mean, whatever it is, I'm moving forward with it. Technology is just a way of getting there, and we need to do it in a sound, secure manner. So I'd say, Joe, get with the business units. In fact, I'd love to speak with them further. If you said, look, get with Jeff and, hey, let's get a quick call going, I can quickly share some more detail about why and how you will not be successful and how you will not be meeting your regulatory requirements by just having the IT people think that they own it, or the business people pointing to IT saying IT owns it. The business people know what their business is. The business people are going to come back with critical pieces to that business impact analysis to kind of get back to what Kerwin is asking. Part of it, there's acronyms that are involved, but basically one of them is recovery time objective. I won't tell you what that means, by the way, in English is and for the business units, recovery time objective is what my goal or objective is to when this business function, right? When do I need to have it back functioning again, right? Online, where my customers can use it, my employees are using it to serve our clients. That service that we lost, when do I have to have it back by? And that's arrived at by looking at those contracts with third-party providers. Because if you may think, well, gosh, I want it tomorrow. I want it, or I want it an hour from now. For the technology folks on the line, they realize, hey, if I have a system, let's even take it further, a highly available system that can't go down at all. Think about airlines. If I can't go down at all, believe me, you will pay through the nose for highly available systems. the technology, the infrastructure to be able to restore and fail over immediately without interruption to your clients has a major price tag. So when I sat down with my clients and work with them on it, they may say, yeah, I want it back up in an hour. And it's true. You do. Now let's talk about your budget. Can you pay to have it back in an hour or 30 seconds or whatever you think you want from a business perspective? See, that's where IT can't answer that question. Business, tell me what's important to you, and then pull out your budget, because we're going to see if you can make that happen. So we can all dream, but let's make it happen. Another question I saw some popped up there, Jeff.
Yep. This one's from Mary Beth, and this is a good one too. How is a business impact analysis formally documented?
Right. So the facets, as you go through more of what I said, right? So I have questionnaires to ascertain what business group you represent, what critical functions you believe are there. So I'll let them take a first pass at it. And then we go through and we do that litmus test I referenced. And who's that from? Is that Mary Beth?
Yes.
So Mary Beth, yeah. So we go through those functions and we say, look, I see you listed maybe 7 or 8 in finance that are critical. And I walk through them saying, look, if it wasn't there, blah, 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 this, that, we arrive at which ones really are important. And then when they say, then I go through and say, hey, what's your, recovery time objective? Like I just shared that whole scenario. And they may say, hey, yeah, I don't want any downtime. Well, I don't want downtime either, nor does the world, but life is life. And the cost of having highly available systems, once I tell you the price, they may say, you know what, I thought I wanted it in an hour. You know what, 3 days or a day's fine. I can do something else and we can work around that and it won't impact our business that much. And sometimes you can't, sometimes it might be, yes, that's the answer. So that's sort of how you arrive at it. You capture that recovery time objective. There's also recovery point objective, recovery strategic objective. And there's a lot more detail than we probably want to do on this call, but I can walk through some of that with Mary Beth and her organization if she has questions further. But you're capturing that data. I'm doing it for each business unit. And I go through that sort of test I said, and then we arrive at, again, through the building blocks that roll up to make one of those functions happen, which are, the dependencies, and I list and articulate, break down those dependencies, and we perform a risk assessment. And I'll tell anybody on this line, whether it's in the banking industry or not, if you want some good reading to really help build through some of this, look at the ffiec.gov website, and specifically the business continuity booklet they have. It's an IT booklet that the federal examiners use. I picked the banking industry because they're very rigorous and they always have been, and they've gone through the full evolution. If you go through there and you look at that document, bounce through the table of contents, it'll direct you to the testing I referenced, the 4 levels, but also how to build a plan. It'll walk you through the business impact analysis that I'm talking about. It'll walk you through then the next phase, which is the risk assessment and how to test and train. It really has some phenomenal guidance. And again, also, if you can't sleep, go ahead and read the whole thing cover to cover, and we'll help put you out. Hopefully that will help.
That would probably do it. Well, I won't comment on that actually. Any last minute questions here? That's a great response, Jerry. Thank you. Did that answer everyone's question, or Mary Beth, did that answer your question specifically? All right. I don't see anything else coming in here. Any last minute questions?
Jeff, I want to stress one point, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Again,
absolutely.
Folks, whether it's Kerwin, Mary Beth, or the other gentleman, Joe, I think, had questions. And if there's others that you read there, if anybody has further questions, we can take it off board. We can, I'll gladly get on a line with any one of you. We can talk through, especially if you've got sometimes this folks that are, not understand. I'll just say that don't completely get this. I understand that. There's a lot of confusion around it, and I'd love to be able to go through. Peter's got a question about repeating bank references. Sure. It's the one yep, that's let's see, HB handbook. Yeah, I believe that's the exact one in there. The continuity plan. That's a pretty good one that Kerwin just put up there, Peter. I hope Peter can see that. But anyway, that's ffiec.gov will get you to the site. Down the bottom right is where they have their IT handbooks. In the back, for those that are in the banking industry, in the way back, you'll see there's 2 levels of examiner testing, kind of for you. If you're a bank or credit union, you can look at those and see what they're going to look at when they come to see you. It kind of gives you a walkthrough of what they're testing and what they're looking to test at your organization before they come in. And hopefully that does help. So Kerwin, thank you for putting the link up there for Peter. I appreciate it. Jeff, thank you for your time. And again, reach out to Jeff. He's going to post this. And if folks have further questions or would like to speak with me or one of my staff members one-on-one or as a group, we'd love to do that.
Awesome. Perfect, Jerry. Thank you so much. And as Jerry alluded to, I'll be sending out a copy of the presentation to everybody this afternoon. So without further ado, appreciate everybody's time. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and we look forward to presenting to you in August. Take care, everybody. Thank you.